Hi everyone, welcome to On the Other Hand. I'm Ariane Zurcher, and another video of me being in my studio. And every morning I wake up and I go into my studio and I think, what will I discover today? What's going to unfold? What will I learn? And every day I learn something and I discover something new, and it's exciting, and it's one of the reasons I love coming in here. So I'll turn you around and we can get started. So I'm just starting the process of adding the chicken wire. I've created my sphere, and now I do the chicken wire, which I really, I don't love working with chicken wire, but I have to say it really does help in the creating of this sphere, because you can, with using the chicken wire, you can make sure that these sections are somewhat in the way that you want. And if they're not, you can always fold this. Like, this is pretty wide, and I can fold it later so that it is similar to the others. But it's just a really nice way to give yourself a kind of loose base where I can use materials like the rooted woven art fiber, hand spun fibers, and I can weave it in here, and I can use, so the chicken wire just serves as a really nice base for other materials. So I like to put a little chicken wire on each section, and that's what I'm planning, just somewhere on here. And then once I have that done, I can add other bits of wire in here, as well as holes. I have used holes in all the spheres. I think I'll do the same, although I don't think I'm going to use, I think I will alter the shape of the holes, and instead of having them round, I think I'm going to go for more organic shapes. So we'll see how that works. All right, I'm going to keep going with my chicken wire. And then I can add mesh, the wire mesh, if I want. I have a little bit more of it, the screen, and I'm waiting because I bought some sleeves so that I won't get cut up. I'm not willing to go through that again. I think they're coming today. And then I have this wire, which is the same kind of thing, but it's much wider, looser. And I'm eager to see how that works. I think I might not get cut up quite as much. And it's more open, which I think I like that. So we'll see what happens with that. But in the meantime, I am going to continue with this. All right, this is what I've got so far, and it's enough for me to start getting materials on here. It's a little misshapen, and that's intentional. It's not supposed to be a perfect sphere. This will be the opening here, where it will hang. Now that I've finished putting this roughly together, just giving myself a base of some kind, something to start with, the question becomes, now what? And that's where all of my brainstorming really helps, because I've made all these notes, right? So I have thought about the different materials that I want to incorporate, right? An old journal from when I was a young girl, and I'm going to use some of these gel prints that I've done on tissue paper. I kind of love the colors here. I've got this material that sort of lends itself nicely with all of this too. I want to go more for pastels, not all, but some pastels and pinks. I also have this, which I created using stabilizer, water-soluble stabilizer. I did a video on how I did this, and then I machine quilted, and I sort of wrote a letter in using red, and then no. And because this sphere, it follows hitting a bottom, that's kind of the personal journey. The third sphere was what remains, and that was equivalent to or analogous to hitting a bottom. And so this sphere is about the next step of realizing that this life, this world isn't working. And so now I have to create a new life, but I have no idea what it is or how to do it even. So that's what this is. So there's hope and learning to say no and planting seeds that will hopefully produce more down the road. All right, so when I don't know, this is all this fabulous material from Rooted Woven Art, and I just love her hand-spun materials that she uses. They're so beautiful. So I am thinking, I love these colors. I think they go really nicely what I've got going here. And so I'm going to just start weaving this into a small section of my chicken wire. And I think I'll just start here. So I can just tie a little knot here. To begin. I like to kind of fray this so that it so you get this sort of sense of it. And there's some metallic in here, which is great. Love that. Okay, and now I can just start pulling it through. I find that if I cut off a piece, so I just start kind of knotting this in and out and around the chicken wire, using that chicken wire as a base, and just making sure I really cover it nicely. I was talking to my husband earlier, and we were talking about creativity and art, and so we were just talking about all of that. And what I was saying was that now this is really about finding myself through what I create. And what I mean by that is that, so this series of spheres really began as in response to political stuff that is happening in the United States, and feeling that I wanted to create my own worlds, literally, I really wanted, but also as a way to find joy, even no matter what was going on, to find ways to enjoy my day, to yeah, I mean, so it was that was really the beginning. And then I just loved the idea of creating my own world, literally creating my own little world, my own little sphere, whatever that was going to be, that gave me joy and that I could sort of, I guess, escape and submerge myself in something that I can control. And then it became part of something more. It became a way of, I guess, reclaiming my own voice, or claiming my own voice. It went from this idea of something outside myself, and I could, as I was working, it became more about it was personal. It became very much a personal journey, process. So then when I finished the first one, I decided, I'm going to do a series. And the series then coincided with the video I did about having an eating disorder, because that was such a big piece. And honestly, I gotta say, it's such a relief to be able to mention that, because it was such a big part of my life. It was a couple decades, it took up my late teens, all of my 20s into my 30s. And as my friends and people I loved were, doing really interesting things with their lives and had careers and children and getting married and children, and I was, I was struggling. I was on a different trajectory, and so be able to talk about all that it's a relief to be able to just sort of, not censor myself as I'm doing what I'm doing now. And what started to happen was the spheres became a kind of visual of that journey of having had this kind of horrific thing that I was doing that was so shameful and so secretive. And working and sort of traveling through that. And so the second sphere, while also in response to this article in the New York Times about the words that were being removed from websites, government websites and others, and or just outright, banned, which was kind of awful to read, along with books that are being banned, etc. All this sort of stuff happening. It reminded me of my own self-censorship, which, whether you want to think of an eating disorder, whether you think of it as an addiction or as just a learned a bad habit that was so ingrained, whatever, it was very, very hard to stop. You hear people talk about stopping smoking and how difficult that is. And, well, it was not easy getting to the other side with an eating disorder. It was extremely, it was one of the hardest things I've ever, in many ways, one of the hardest things I've done. So yeah, it was so punishing. It was such a punishing thing to do. And what I have, I guess, gleaned from all of that, from that period, is that what I'm doing now, creating, coming into my studio, facing myself, and just creating, there's a lot of healing, but also this, I talk a lot about kindness, and that my goal for the rest of my life is to practice that as best I can. And one of the things that occurred to me as I was kind of journaling about all this was that the thing about kindness is that it is not a default for me. It's not something that I came to naturally. I had, as a young woman, I had a pretty dim view of human beings. I didn't feel that they were necessarily a great, I didn't have a lot of hope for humanity. So kindness became something that I really, really wanted to work on and to have a daily practice of. And but kindness didn't mean just to other people. It meant also, it meant to myself. And it really, in many ways, kind of starts with myself. And the more I'm able to tap into that for myself, the easier it is to be that way towards others. So this, I call it, in a way, I call my coming into the studio every day and working on these spheres is a kind of daily practice, right? And that's part of my kindness practice as well. And I think about all that as I'm doing this stuff, I think about what that means and how it's not easy and it doesn't come easily. And so these spheres, this sphere, as I think I mentioned, is all about what happens after you stop doing something that's been so harmful. What do you replace it with? And so for me, replacing it with art, replacing it with community, replacing it with close friendships, that's all a big piece of this. But how do you get to that? How do you get to that after living this other way for so long? Because for people who've not dealt with addiction or some crippling habit that has become so ingrained that it's the rhythm of their life, all those things I would imagine are just so obvious. But for somebody else, like me, it wasn't obvious at all. I had to learn how to do all that. I had to learn how to trust people. I had to learn how to have close relationships and let people in enough to get to a place where there was any trust. And so that's kind of what what I'm working on. So I think about, so what colors does that, what are the colors that, so these are colors that I think of, the blues and the turquoise and there's metallic, which is, metallic always says to me, metallic's a little magical, it's like a little pop of magic, a little glimmer of something. And, I want to add pinks in here, and because pinks are also, that was an important piece for me, was I hated pink, and I always said I hated pink, and embracing pink, which is like tenderness and gentle, and I think there's a little kindness in pink. So, that's kind of where, that's what I think about. Those are the things I think about. And as I'm creating, what is it that I'm wanting to express? What does this mean to me? What does that look like? What does that feeling look like? Like if I could put that feeling as a color, what color would it be? If I could take that feeling of despair and that leap that you have to take when you're changing your whole life, when you're making a radical change to your life, you have no idea whether this is going to work. You don't know what lies ahead. You don't know whether it's going to be better. You hope so, but you have no idea. And then, especially with something like, I keep using the word addiction, and I get that for some people that's not going to resonate. But for me, food was as addictive as alcohol was to an alcoholic, or drugs were to a drug user. The difference was that you can live a life without taking drugs for the most part, and you can, recreational drugs, and you can live a life without drinking alcohol, but you can't live a life without eating food. So it was figuring out how to eat in a safe manner, and how to do it, how to not use food as a way to numb out. And so all of these things became things that I had to learn how to do. So there it is. This is the little piece. I've got a whole bit here. I got a little bit of wire, and I'm going to twist and turn in here. And then I'm going to figure out what my next step is. And as I've talked about, when I don't know, I pull different things, and then I think what would be easiest. And that's what I do. One of the things I'm doing here is I'm looking at things that I want in relation to other things, right? So I've got this bit of turquoise, so I kind of love this. And then this is going into more golds and ochres and whites, and so I could bring in some of those colors over here. But I also really like the idea of adding some of this. So I can do that. I can add just little bits at a time, placing this sort of here tentatively, and then adding other things that are speaking to me, and kind of go from there. I don't have to work in just a section. I can work across a couple of sections. I also wanted to show you something. So in addition to buying a whole new bit of chicken wire and some more galvanized 18 gauge wire for my spheres, because I'm almost out, I bought these. Okay, I gotta show you these. And we can laugh at this, but you'll know why. You'll know why I bought these. I was going to get welding gloves, but the problem with the welding gloves was they looked really hot and bulky. And then I found these. Now look how hard they go all the way up. And my fingers are free. So this is kind of perfect for when I'm dealing with this mesh, which just ripped my arms up, my arms and hands. So I needed something that wasn't fabric. I needed something that wasn't going to get caught on the wire. So that is why I went with these. Now look. I'll back it up so that you can see. It is a little warm, but, today is not warm. So we're back into cooler weather here in New York City. And when I'm working on this is not going to, it's not getting caught on anything. So that's great. These are my new gloves that I'm going to be... Come on, that's pretty funny. I also want to point out something else, and I'll zoom in on this, which is instead of just doing circles, I'm doing some more organic shapes. And ovals. I didn't want a perfect circle. I wanted to have roundish shapes that are a little bit more organic, because this sphere it's all about finding my way, and that's not a perfect circle, and this is not a perfect sphere. It's got, it's misshapen, and it's finding its way. I do think that this will be where it will hang from here. Okay, I've pinned this just a little bit here so that it's just kind of loosely positioned and it won't move too much. The beauty of the mesh is it pins really easily into it. And that's nice, as opposed to the wire, which is a lot harder. All right, and then I've got this piece, which I cut and am going to be putting here. But before I continue, I want to figure out what I'm doing here, if anything, and also what am I doing around the circle. But I like that this has some pink in it already, so I can start adding pink in here. Now, one idea is to take this material and weave it in here, from here to here, before I add this, so that it's, which I might do, and then have it kind of end at this circle. So I might unpin this just for now, or leave it sort of flapping, and then add this so that I can just have it go back and forth. And then I can also weave things into it if I want. I think that's what I'll do. Now, one thing that happens with the spun material is that if you cut it, it unravels pretty quickly. So you have to be careful not to do that. And so I'm just gonna tie this here. I think that's pretty good. And I do have to cut a length of this because it's too much so I want to kind of gauge how much I need of this back and forth, and then cut off that part. And think that's probably good. Okay. And then I want to tie the end here so that it doesn't completely come undone. All right. I'm going to push this in and weave it. As I mentioned, I think this is my fourth sphere, right? And it's all about figuring out a new way to live. That's what this one represents. So it's not just about resilience, but about learning how to care for myself. I mentioned before being kind, that the kindness practice had to include me. I had to learn how to be kind to myself. And protect myself. And what did that mean, Get better at creating boundaries, something I had no idea how to do. Build a community, another thing I had no idea. Become a part of a community. These were all things that I just had no idea how to do any of that. One of the things that's really helped me in all of this is finding a kind of gesture that I can, it's kind of a shortcut, like on the computer you have a shortcut. And one of my shortcuts that I've adopted for myself is I found that if I placed my hand just above my heart, like this was a gesture I could do very, very quickly and subtly. I could do it in public. No one would even know what was going on. If I was really struggling, I could gently sort of, do this to myself, gently, a little gentle pat, kindness, and a kind of way of saying, I'm here, I got you, we're okay. That's been a massive one. Finding something like that was really important. Just a little gentle reminder. A little silent way of saying, we got this. I'm here. You're going to be okay. That was a big one. So in this sphere, I'd like to have little quiet moments, little moments of kind of that mimic that idea, that kind of gentle holding, saying it's going to be okay. And I think one can accomplish that through color, through form, So, and this was helpful. I would ask myself, so what color is that? What color would that gentle, I got you, what color would that be? What colors? And then use those. And then the other thing is there a shape? For me, it's all about rounded, not linear. I've always been really, really attracted to the more organic, rounded shapes. Because I think for me, that really is about, there's kindness to those shapes, and there's a gentleness to those shapes. There's an imperfection, which is perfect. I need that. I need that constant reminder that it's okay. It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to not have it all exactly, just so. It's okay to, not only is it okay, but it's desirable. Get a little wild. So these are the things I think about as I'm working. All right, let's see if is that going to accomplish what I'm hoping for? No, I don't know, maybe. And then remember, I'm adding this to it. This will probably get cut off. I don't know. Something is going to come over this. But right now, I think that works well enough. Yeah, keep going. See where it goes. It'll be interesting. And I like how this is nicely working together. I've been looking around at different things, little bits of embroidery and stuff, and I rather like this, but I don't like the color. I don't like how white this is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my different pens that I have and experiment with making them more in keeping with the colors here. So this kind of lime green. And what I can do is I can take a bit of this. See, I have some here, and find my scissors, which are in here somewhere. I knew they were in here. So I want this color, this kind of green. You see how it's kind of green? And I want a kind of turquoise. So let's see what this color is. Okay. And then let's see what this is. Okay, and let's see what this looks like up against. All right, so now I want to look at this against here. It's okay. It's not, the turquoise isn't really turquoisey enough. I'm going to pull out the big guns here. This is my Brush Marker Pro. And look at all those fabulous colors. So let's see if I can find something a bit closer to what I want. Let's see what this is. That's better, I think. Yes, okay, so that's good. We like that. And then that kind of lime green. I don't know if this is, I think this might be too dark. Yes. Okay, we need lighter. Let's see, I think this is going to be too bright. Oh, that's pretty good. I think. Okay, let me see what it looks like with the globe. So there's my sphere. And these are the two colors, this and this, and that's good. Okay, so I've got my two colors, these. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to change the color. Doesn't have to be. Now another thing I can do is I can spray this with water and it will dilute it. Okay, so there's that. And now I can come in here with my other color. This is it's from Steph Francis. It's a silk cocoon rod. That's what it's called. And at Steph Francis, they have them in all different colors. It's not just white. Like I have, I think, a hot pink and a couple other. So I'm being very, I'm not being exact. I'm just kind of getting this color in there. And then I can go ahead and... Now, another thing I can do is I can get some mustard in here as well. But again, I'm going to need to test it. What did I do with that bit? I was testing on... Here it is. Okay. It's always good to test on something else. So let's see what this color is. See, that is not what I would call mustard. See what this is. That's why you need to test them. Nope. It's too brown. I need more of a golden yellow. So let's see if this is it. It's pretty orange. But I could combine this with maybe this. Or maybe just use this. That's not bad. I kind of like that. I think I'm going to do that. Now again, if I want to play even more, I could experiment with wetting it, but I would do it on this first to see what I got before I went in there on something that I actually care about and want to use. So this is just going to give me a little pop of something else. By just going into these little crevices with this other color. Okay, let's see. What else have I got here? Okay, so that's pretty good. Just gonna go under here. Okay, so that totally changes it. I'll put a link for this down in the description section. I love those things. These are the other ones I have. They're Tombow, water-based. I like those too. And now I can put this somewhere on here. I'm not sure where, but it's definitely going to work with this area. And maybe it's going to go here. See where this black bit goes? Maybe I kind of mimic that right here. And I can just pin it for now until I have a better idea of what I'm doing with this section. I also kind of like this, so maybe I put this in here like that. Maybe I cover up some of this big red blotch so it's not quite so red. And maybe I do this. Yeah, I think that gives it a little pop, you know? It's a tiny little bit. It's not too much. And now, let's see, now what? I have some of this. Can definitely add this somewhere. I have some more of this, which I can also add. I have more of my map, so I'm gonna play around. I've got lots of things to play with, and I'll see what I can come up with. As always, I love hearing from you in the comments, and I would love to know, what are you working on? Are you working on anything? And as you're working on it, are you learning something about yourself? And if so, what? What are you learning? I'd love to know. I hope you'll join me as I keep working on this next piece. Who knows where it's going to go, but I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot. Thanks so much for watching.